States. I left cancer research to get into IT consulting and sales, and I worked at Oracle, Bell, and PwC, among others. Now I'm a happy entrepreneur, happy because I'm doing what I really love, and that is helping other people. I'm happier actually when other people succeed than when I succeed.
Great. Mike, just sorry to interrupt you because we're getting feedback off of the live stream.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
My name is Parker. I'm one of the two hosts here along with Christine. I was born in love. There we go.
Thank you.
Sorry, we killed that right. There we go.
Just working out the glitches as we go. Good.
All right. So let's go advance one slide if you would.
Yep. Whoops. Yep. That's me.
There
Hi.
she is. Okay. So Christine, if you'd like to go through your background.
Yeah. So I've been in the tech industry now for, over 2 decades and had the opportunity to work with hundreds and hundreds of companies, most of which are large global companies, as the slide indicates, the top 40 Fortune 100s. One of the things Mike and I have done in our careers is help other companies shine. So you may not be familiar with us, but you're familiar with the success of our work with our clients. Working with advanced solutions, definitely interested in the executive level, taking the vision and strategy and putting it into play in the most effective, efficient, productive, and cost-saving way. So that's me from the Z, I should say, NPZ, Zitiso Inc. And that brings us to our offerings.
Yeah, so our offerings really are on two levels. So there's a level that we do that is very consultative, and there's a layer that we do that's very much a doer level. So the delivery. And on the consultative side of things, that's the outer ring that you see there, the AI consulting, AI governance, and IT strategic planning. When we get closer to the ground level, what we're doing is we're putting together AI assessments to see how much people know, find the gems in your organization. There are lots of people in your organization that know a lot about AI, and they don't make it known to anyone. So assessments are great for smoking that out. And then from there, what we do is we put together a training plan and put together learning journeys that can be individual, team-based, and then set them up for the entire organization. And then that is all encompassed within AI adoption for your organization. So we have a question right off for anyone in the chat. Do you currently have any governance in place around how AI is used in your organization? And this is just a yes, no, or not sure answer.
So I think it's just put it in the comments section of the LinkedIn Live event, right, Mike?
Yeah, if you could put that in the comments section.
Yeah, we want this to be interactive.
And we'll address those later. But we're just thinking about governance around how AI is used in your organization. What kind of governance is in place? Is there governance in place? Yes, no. If you're not sure, fair enough. If you were to take all of the industries that you know of, Christine, all the companies you worked with, what would you say the percentages are if you had to guess?
Well, for the companies that I've been working with, which are the large global national, they all have AI governance. However, it is a struggle because, and this will come up in our conversation today, that while they have it, a lot of people aren't aware of it and they just do their own thing. And they use the tools they want. And then they rely on the networks to sort of shut people out. People find workarounds. So it's not a very effective AI governance strategy, and it's not communicated into explaining why and what are the options. So yes, there is AI governance in large organizations, but I think it's still very, very early days for it, and it needs to quickly ramp up. How about you, Mike? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I would say that at the top level, I think there's planning going on. I don't know if there's a full-fledged, I know, we've famously seen some CEOs that have come out and said, here's our AI
Hmm.
adoption plan for our organization.
Yeah.
And that's it's a bit groundbreaking, when they do that. And they really want to communicate it well, completely down for the entire organization. But for the most part, I think, they haven't decided yet exactly what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I think one concern is stifling, innovation and growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking
And
that the
then,
two are in opposition rather than governance as a way to empower with the company's future in mind.
well, absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
the other thing is, it's a bit of a moving target. So
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
want to put a static plan in place to, inhibit the growth of something that's moving so fast. So I think that's the primary feedback that I get.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, we'll jump into, trust is your competitive advantage, turning AI risk into your strategic advantage, which is our main event for today. So the agenda. First, we're going to be talking about what is AI digital trust and why is it business critical, very important. And then the 5 pillars of digital trust, real world risks of ignoring trust, how to build AI digital trust, core best practices for trusted AI, key techniques for AI success, how to get your business bundle from this webinar, which we'll talk about at the end, just before the question and answer period.
Yeah. So we're kind of jam-packed here and lots of good information to go through. So thank you, Mike, for setting
Absolutely.
us up. Uh, I want you to keep in mind that you'll also get, if you request it at the end when you're getting your bonus bundle, you can get a link to the recording of these events so you can review it. So, what is AI digital trust? Let's get our terms out there. And why is it business critical? Well, when we talk about AI digital trust, just so everybody's on the same page, this is about that everybody who's impacted by your use of AI in your organization, so customers, employees, partners, regulators, all of that, that they can trust it. What do we mean by that? That they would see that it's ethical, that it's secure, that it's fair, that it's aligned with our human values. And actually, you can start to say everybody has different points of view on that. And this is why we have laws and regulations emerging, coming out in all the different countries, of course, EU being one of the leaders in that field. But you as a business owner should really, really care about this. Why? So why is this important? Well, first of all, if you want to leverage AI, the trust factor, both for your employees, for your customers, that they can actually then be okay with, working with the AI systems that you have, making sure that you're adhering to the regulations of the land. So again, this is why it's very important to have that. So certainly, Mike and I have exchanged stories on the fines. Uh, Maybe more of that later, but there have been a lot of companies and headlines, and more of them are coming out because of the regulatory risks. uh, Probably maybe more closer to your heart is your brand. You have this company and you've put so much blood, sweat, and tears into growing it. Do you want to risk losing it because of overeager and misuse of AI? Brand reputation is huge. And one breach of trust can erode the years, and it's not easy to get that back. Now, obviously, we get excited, like you were saying, Mike, about not wanting to inhibit AI, the AI factor for innovation, having that competitive advantage.
Mhm.
But you have to do it with all the necessary resource rules and regulations around you to make sure that you're doing it in the right way. So
Mhm.
it is a competitive advantage to have AI, but more specifically, to have AI that is done with digital trust in mind, with the proper AI governance in place. So now let's take a look at the 5 pillars. So the 5 main things. Now, of course, you could go out there and Google and look at AI digital trust, and you can see other things listed there. But definitely, these are the recurring themes, and these are definitely ones that governments have been focusing on and getting laws around. So let's take a look at each of them. And while we go through this, I want you to think: are how do you think your organization is going to be able to support it or would. Is there any one of these that I'm going through that you think is going to be more of a challenge than another? So, keep that in mind, and we'll pause at the end of this section just to get your input. So, transparency. You need to be clear about your AI systems, where they are and what work they're doing. You need to be upfront. It's kind of like having a name tag on an employee. People should be allowed to know who they're dealing with. So if there are any issues, they can actually come back and say, "Hey, I was talking to so and so and it didn't go so well," right? So we definitely need to be able to tell people when AI is being used. But another one, notice their explainability with this is that why was AI doing what it did? Right? So being able to understand the logic behind the system, which leads us nicely into accountability. You don't just, set AI free and just say, "Hey, run my business for me." No, people are still needed. And I think this is another thing that can actually help build trust in your organization with your employees. You're not replacing them. You're just basically leveraging new technology to make doing their jobs better, making them more productive, more efficient, and being able to achieve those goals that you've set forth. So you need to have humans that are accountable, and this speaks, directly back to having clear roles and responsibilities, which is a core piece of the governance structure, and that there is a person that is going to be held accountable for the AI system in some way. So we've got transparency, we've got accountability. Now let's look at security and privacy. And this may be the first thing that you think of when you hear AI digital trust. So obviously, this is fundamental. So we have to protect it from cyber threats, manipulation, just like any other technology. However, this technology is getting better and better. And while you're using AI in order to grow your business, other people's business is to take AI and thwart your efforts. So we need to make sure that we're putting the safeguards in place for the AI system itself. Obviously, then this runs on top of things that you're probably already aware of, and if not, definitely that would need to be addressed. But understanding the nature of your data, what is considered private and personal, what are the laws about how you're supposed to be managing it, and definitely building on that for the data protection laws. The next one that you can see here is fairness and inclusion. And I think this one has made a little bit more of the headlines because it's a little bit more glamorous, right? When you hear, I remember one of the news stories of, and this was with Google, they were using AI to handle their hiring practices. So it was part of an HR tool. And they discovered, and were actually having to scramble to deal with this, that it was discriminating against women. Historically, it was men that, got the engineering jobs. We know that, just a historical fact. And the AI systems, most of its data was about men. So it drew the conclusion, the bias that, oh, all the engineers that Google would want would be men. So we have to actually really have a robust practice in place to understand where bias can be introduced, how it can be detected. There's some really good tools out there now for that, to understand for things like hiring, my example, but also like in finance, for lending, for healthcare, in terms of how you treat people. So this is something that we aggressively are working on in the industry, but this will become your responsibility as you adopt AI tools, AI platform. So you want a diverse perspective, and you want to make sure that different uh, demographics can have access to this, so that you can make sure that you're including and you're being fair. You're not, leaving any employee or any customer out. And finally, the fifth one is reliability. So I don't know how many of you have had the experience of just sort of playing around, maybe online with ChatGPT, and you're having this exchange, asking questions, getting information back, and the next thing you know, it's like ChatGPT is losing its mind. It's like, what? And now it's gotten better, but this is part of that consistent factor. So as your systems run, they learn and they build on it. And what we need to do is we need to keep track of the direction they're going, right? We need to make sure they're not going off track, that they're staying focused and working. So you have to make sure that it is consistent under exceptional conditions, not just, the first two or three tries. So notice that last bullet there is the monitor and performance. So we know about testing and validating, but monitoring is so much more critical in AI than any other technology that we've worked with. So making sure you don't get that model drift where it goes off the edge. So having introduced those five pillars, which of them do you feel most confident in your organization about? And maybe even highlight which ones do you feel the least. So just a reminder, we had the transparency. And if you remember, transparency was admitting we're using AI here, and here's why. Accountability. Do you have a contact person, a human being that can actually respond to issues and take responsibility for problems that the AI system may introduce? Now, of course, you want to have your data protected following the laws of the land about data, but also understanding the vulnerabilities that are unique to AI systems. So securing them and maintaining their integrity. Fairness and inclusion, this is the bias. So making sure that the way the AI system is working, the data that it's working with, and the logic that it has around interpreting the data is actually addressing concerns around fairness and inclusion. And then the last one, reliability. Is it consistent? Are you monitoring to make sure that it's not going off the rails? So are any of these ones you're going, oh, this is great. We're already doing that. I feel confident, but this one is a weak one. And you can use
Yeah.
the comments. Excuse me.
What do you feel like for you, Christine, if it was a 1 through 5 vote on your side?
Okay. So I think things that are heavily reliant on technology tend to be ones that go ahead with greater confidence. So security, even though like it's an aggressive moving target, but it's one that we're actively working in. So there are the tools, you use them, you get the updates, you get the new tools. So security, we're I think we're actually relative to the others pretty good with. Reliability sort of falls in that, and especially in organizations that have adopted, that started with Agile, moved into DevOps approach to things, where monitoring, observability was an important factor. Excuse me. Reliability, we've got some good practices there. Of course, they need to be ramped up. So security and reliability are heavily technical focused. It's the transparency, accountability, and fairness. Um, and and interestingly, like obviously we're sensitive to fairness and inclusion.
Yeah,
Um, Transparency is something that some organizations really hesitate with. They don't want
yeah.
to let you know that,
No,
oh,
and I think that's a really fair point. I would say transparency being a strong suit, as long as it's not IP transparency.
right, right. So what
So
do
there's
we
a
mean
there's a
by,
big curtain, big
yeah,
iron curtain between, your marketing information about your company, and then protecting your intellectual protocol.
yeah.
So
Now,
yeah,
this is an interesting thing because this is where governments are going to be sort of, standing in. So at the very minimum, even if you don't have a law in place, you should be willing to let people know. Like if you call a company and you're not talking to a human, like they're so good now, you would think you're talking to a human. It should be up front saying, I'm an AI system. You can talk to me, I can answer your questions, and if at any point you need to talk to a person, let me know, right? So there has to be that kind of transparency at minimum.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then,
that's
of
great.
course, like the accountability factor is making sure that there is a human, like whatever team is responding to any events through monitoring should also be the ones that are given the authority to be accountable. So we'll talk a little bit about that, how to build that kind of team.
Well, let's talk about the risks of ignoring trust.
Yeah, yeah. So you may be kind of going, it seems like too much work, and I just really like the convenience of AI, but oh my goodness, this is such a timely conversation we're having. You need to understand the risks that are in place if you don't do due diligence. Don't get overly eager to just start using AI without understanding what it's doing and the potential vulnerabilities that you have. So three of the top risks Obviously, these are not the only ones, but the three top that I chose was the regulatory risks, and those are the ones hitting the headlines, right?
Mhm.
Actually, one of the headlines that I was looking at today was how, and I was surprised. This is U.S. Secretaries and Exchange Commission, so SEC, basically charged an investment firm with $400,000 fine for making false and misleading statements in their use of AI. So regulatory risks, you need to know what those are and make sure you're doing everything right. The brand risks, again, we kind of indicated that if something goes wrong with your AI, people won't trust you, right?
Right.
It's not
Yeah,
about the
because
AI.
you're the editor, you're
Yeah,
the publisher,
yeah,
not the AI tool. The AI tool can be as creative as it wants,
yeah,
but you have to come in and say, no, it wasn't 800 million that we made last year. It was 400 million.
yeah. Darn.
Darn.
Um,
Would have
and
been
then of
nice.
course the people that are involved. So employees is one part of the risk that you have, and customers as well. So here's a look at the regulatory risks. So some headlines for you. And again, looking at different geographies, I just using these three. So EU, Canada, and the US. Obviously, there's a whole other world out there. It's not just to say AI is only happening in these places, but just for the sake of this conversation, notice with EU has some very strict and well documented regulations around the use of AI. But notice that violations can cost up to 7% of global revenue.
Mhm.
That's for a large company, that's a huge risk if you're not doing it right. So it does require transparency, oversight, documentation. So if you're a business in the EU or you're a business working with the EU, like you can be an American company just doing some business over there in Europe, and they will hunt you down. They will come after you if you break one of their laws because you did business in the EU. Canada has Bill C 27, also referred to as AIDA, and that this is basically going to come with enforcement of financial penalties. I know that Canada's work on their regulations has been definitely strongly influenced by all the work that was done in the EU, but they're also developing it further to address unique Canadian concerns. And that, as I mentioned with SEC, finding the investment firm, you do have a US executive order on AI. So you need to make sure that you understand what the standards are, what the audits would be expected, and make sure that you've got all your I's dotted, your T's crossed. So regulatory risk, know what the regulations are for your business and make sure that you're compliant. Now, brand risk, I brought up a couple examples of the risk to your brand where it happens. So one is when you work with I think many of you may have already looked in and you hear about LLMs, large language models, right? Those are kind of the heart. There's different kinds of models, but the bottom line is that's the logic, that's the algorithm. So the code that is the AI system itself could be biased, as we mentioned. So uh, like the hiring, my example was Google, but I know that a few others have encountered the same problem, and that this is obviously going to make you not trust the company. Notice the last one, data misuse scandal. Oh, that's a scary one. If you're like when you go to a company and they're giving them your name and your email and maybe some other information in order to get the service that you want to make sure that they know how to protect your data. Are they doing it right? And AI itself can actually, it lives off of data. It breathes data. It's remembering everything. So definitely you don't want to have the AI system misuse your data, right? So it's not enough that you say, oh, I've got a database and we've encrypted it and we protected it. You got to think AI is a system that's going in there and seeing everything. So does it know how to behave properly? So loss of reputation, it's not worth that risk. And then the third one that I mentioned was about the people. So divided into two. Uh, the employee one, like employees are going to feel really threatened. I've worked with a number of large companies, thinking of my work with financial institutions in particular around accounting, and they're concerned AI is going to take my job away from me, rather
Right.
than seeing that my job is changing. It's not that you're losing your job, but your job is changing. We've got different ways of doing it. But people feel threatened with change. So you've got to have governance in place to help them see the opportunities and notice that they're inside your fence. They have access to things. And if you don't deal with them properly up front, they will definitely take care of themselves. So they can sabotage, they can inappropriately expose, or just simply just not engage, not use it. So you're missing the opportunity. So you definitely want to, go through all of the employees that are going to be impacted by AI or influenced by AI and make sure they understand what's going on so that they're empowered. And then, of course, we understand with customers. So notice that last one, people avoid your company if they think they can't trust you with their data. And
Mhm.
that the other one is the fairness and bias. Remember how we said that was one of the pillars? If they think that you're not, you may focus on, well, it was just that small minority group that got offended. No, there are so many people out there that care about the minority groups, that have a lot of influence and power. So it's, you have to basically, that fairness and inclusion has to be locked down. So there's big, big consequences. And I mean, if the only thing that motivates you is money, then this is all money, right? The success and failure of your business. So if a customer was to ask you how your company uses AI, could you confidently answer? So you can contribute your response in the comment section. But I'm wondering, Mike,
Mhm.
what's your experience with your clients? How many do you think really know what's going on with
There's
AI?
there's the active adopters that are actually pushing for AI first kind of model.
Yeah,
But they're, I think, in the leading edge for AI. Most are kind of in the middle. They haven't really decided what to do. And then there's the others that are really trying to avoid it. Like there might be AI going on in my organization, but I
yeah,
don't even want to be aware.
yeah. Leave me alone. Just let me do my job.
Let me do my job the way I've always done it. But then they're seeing like, some people outperform others,
Yeah,
and they'll say, I'm using these great tools. And then, a manager will come up to the executive and say, we're really getting some great productivity out of these tools. I think we need to take a look at them for the enterprise.
yeah,
And then there's no more, staying out of it. You're being dragged into it. And then, if that's supported by research as to what other organizations, in your stream, in your industry that are using them and how far ahead they are, it becomes difficult to argue with adopting tools
yeah,
at some point.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think the proof is in the pudding in that way.
yeah. I think even if you as a leader of your organization are not really feeling ready to go down that path or don't see the necessity of it,
Right.
the problem you have though is that you're going to have employees that know of them and that use them, and you only want them to use them in the way that's safe for your organization. You want them to use them with the right controls in place.
Right. You're seeing an uneven playing field. You're
Yeah,
seeing some employees outperforming others. But then again, if you had to sign off the SEC example, right?
yeah,
If I'm the person putting my name down and signing the document for the SEC, then
yeah,
I'm completely compliant
yeah,
in every financial protocol. It would keep me up at night
yeah.
knowing who's done what with AI when I have no clue, and it's
Oh,
black box
that's
for me.
that's not unlike the Samsung developers. Do you remember hearing that news story?
Right,
And how they were using AI to help them with their code, but they were putting their proprietary code into AI tools like Gemini, Copilot, or ChatGPT. And
right.
it's like publishing your intellectual
Yeah,
property.
thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for giving us your code. That that's scary. So really, if you haven't already haven't address the AI question in your organization, just do it today. Just start working on it today. Like it should have been done yesterday, but today is today. Just get going on it. You really do need to have some controls in place. Yeah. Yeah.
Control it before it controls
Controls
you.
you. Yeah. Oh, I like that. So let's talk about, a little bit of the how to. So how to build AI digital trust. So we know what it is. We know what's important. We understand the five pillars, the areas of focus that we would have. And, definitely that sort of ignoring it, it just makes it worse. So let's just dive in and start building it. So we have things that you can be doing. So strategies that we have to build AI digital trust. So integrate trust, define AI usage principles. Like this would have been really important for the Samsung engineers to kind of know, hey, we'll give you the AI tool. We don't want you to go out on the public internet. This is the difference between doing public and on-prem AI tooling. And it can definitely be built to do it on-prem so you're not publishing things.
And
Uh,
certainly private AI or on-premise
yeah, yeah,
AI is the way to go
yeah,
for this organization.
absolutely. You want to establish a trust team. I'm going to talk about that. And then the last bit, operationalize and educate. So I'm going to explain each of these. As I go through each of these, I want you to think about which ones you've seen happen and which ones you're going, oh, we didn't think to do that. So uh, pay attention to that. So integrate trust. Now, the beautiful thing is that we've been working with AI for decades. Sorry, IT for decades. And we do have IT governance frameworks out there. And we're not expecting you to have a completely separate effort. What we want is that it would be embedded into your existing IT governance frameworks. So don't reinvent the wheel. This doesn't have to be a complete overhaul, but there does have to be unique and specialized focused on an AI piece itself. And as we were saying, there has to be accountability. So you need to have ownership of AI. So ownership of AI risk, just like you have for financial controls and cybersecurity controls, you need to have the same thing for AI. And that obviously, if you're thinking of your regulatory risks, then you're going to have audits. So have internal audits to be prepared for anything that may come in externally. So going through and making sure everybody's on board, everybody's doing it the right way. It's not about policing, it's about supporting and empowering, enabling and encouraging, but within the constraints that ensure success. Define AI usage principles. So principles are statements of truth. So these are the basically you can think of them like the guiding rules. So we need to make sure that we have what our philosophy is expressed to every single employee, that they understand what your organization wants to do with AI and why. So there's the rationale of it. So examples, now these are just sort of uh, names that you could have. So human first, if you have a principle of human first, then it's understanding things like if you had an AI system interacting with a customer and they're not happy with it, that they have a way to talk to a human and they can express whatever concern they have over AI and that you can deal with it proactively. Bias aware, transparent by default. Those are just a couple other examples. If you've not done IT principles, uh, then this is going to be a harder exercise, and that's definitely a gap that would need to be filled in your organization. But if you've done IT principles, then it's just extending on it to have AI specific ones. Now, principles themselves, and this is just well known by enterprise architecture practices, when you have principles, principles are nice ideas, but they don't mean anything unless they have actions. So actions would be like your policies. It's like saying, we want to protect our assets. So we're going to have you log in, and when you log in, you're going to have a password, and the password has to be this number of characters of this type, and you have to change it every 90 days or whatever that rule is. That's the policy to put into practice that you secure your assets. Going to do the same thing with AI. So make sure that whatever principle you have has a collection of meaningful, actionable steps or that need to be, or tasks that need to be done. So the policies. And that there, if you notice there at the last, just pointing you in the right direction, there are AI principles published out there. So as much as we have the building of the governance, part of the governance is to say, here are some good AI principles. Now, you can take those and then interpret them for your organization, right? So these are like serving as guidance. You can embrace them 100%, but it's not going to be the complete picture you need. You still have to do it for your organization to target your concerns. And then establishing a trust team. So we need, notice this, it's not just the AI engineers. It's not
Mhm.
just the tech people here. We're talking about the fact that this is going to be something that impacts and affects all employees. So have appropriate representation in a team to have that perspective. Notice that it's interesting because in the second bullet there, you can see that if we have it vetted through multiple lens, then we have less gaps. The way a data scientist will look at things is going to be very different than somebody who's working in HR or in product management, right? So we definitely want to have a diverse team. Notice the last bullet. It's all well and good to organize people and say, hey, you're our AI trust team, but it's meaningless if they don't have authority, right? So
Mhm.
if they have concerns and they think, wait a minute, something's not quite right here, they need to have the authority to put things on pause until the concerns are addressed. Best to be
Yes.
safe than sorry.
Mhm.
So now let's operationalize it. So this is where we have the idea of the trails. Now notice here I have the specific one model. So the AI engine, the logic for the AI system itself, that you're actually auditing it. So that you can see its behavior. And it's not just about the technical support for it, but it's to see how it's impacting, what it's producing, whatever, like if it's doing content generation or predictions or, interpreting visuals like image, facial recognition systems, things like that, that you're actually auditing its behavior and seeing if it's, again, if it's conforming to the expectations. And then, of
Mhm.
course, checking for bias. So this is definitely something that the trust team can support in terms of making sure that we're getting the results and consistency with fairness out. Now, as I was mentioning, there's some really cool tools that are coming out with us. I'm mentioning one here, SHAP.
Mhm.
Um, and so explainability tools. So we can automate some of this and get some support. But it's really about disclosing the AI system to give us the information so we can make the right decisions
Yeah,
and
and I
identify
really
the gap.
like that, the input on reviews. So
Oh
I
yeah,
guess in a smaller team, you would want the people that are not generating code, that not the engineers that made it,
yeah,
be the folks that are testing it and auditing it. Because
right.
no one wants to call their baby ugly.
Yeah,
And it's the thing of, if you've looked at it 100 times, you're not going to see a mistake anymore. You need
true,
a fresh set of
true.
eyes, right?
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
love the external review, because they have no problem. In fact, their job is to call your baby ugly.
yes.
So they will be happy to do that for you. So it just depends if you're large enough an organization. Those external reviews are very helpful.
But they're helpful even in smaller organizations. But the
Absolutely.
way in which that you may need to get the external review is by hiring in a team that knows how to do that for you to give you the support. You don't
Yeah.
need to have all that expertise in house. It may not be your business, but that's where having the right team to turn to help you with that could be.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is oftentimes really rare if you're building code, to have somebody who has QA experience on
yeah,
your team.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Excellent point. And that leads us to making sure everybody knows how to do their jobs. So the educate. Now, you may think that AI is technology and will train up our technical team. So data scientists and software engineers are all excited to learn AI, and that's great. However, with AI, everyone needs to know about it. As appropriate to their role and their use of it, they need to know about it. They need to understand it. So things like what AI can and can't do. So one, there's the technical strengths and weaknesses of it, but there's the other where you've made the decision in our organization, we're using it here and not there, and here's why. Uh, how do you educate your employees to recognize red flags? to spot the risks, to be sensitive to what you're concerned about with AI. Get them to actually, be vigilant. It's not unlike if you have employees trained on your security of your building, they may not be the security guard, but everybody can pay attention to tailgaters. Everybody can pay attention to whether the door was locked or not, right? Whether a light is burnt out, whether a camera is running. You can pay attention to these things. We want the same kind of behavior around our AI systems. And then understanding what is meant by ethical AI. That's a whole other conversation in itself, but definitely uh, for their work, what is right versus what is wrong. Make it very clear so that there's no confusion. It tends to be an area that is prone to subjectivity, and we want things to be turned to very objective ways of viewing and working with it. And then, of
Yes,
course,
definitely
yeah,
human first and human friendly.
yes, human first and human
That's your
friendly. I
first
like
line
that.
of code, please.
Yeah, so true. And then I love this last one is like, no question is a stupid question, first and foremost. But definitely when it comes to all of these changes and the impact and what the AI system is and how it works and things like that, you want people, and if we want them to spot risks and red flags, they need to feel safe. So if something seems off, people should feel not just allowed or permitted, but empowered. There should be some kind of, thank you that goes with having them speak up and alerting you to a weakness, right? So making sure that people know it's something that you desire. This is a good thing. You can be a star being that vigilant in watching and understanding your AI systems. So now, are any of those that we mentioned uh, out of that whole list would be the hardest for your business and why? So just reminding you, you want to integrate trust. That was leveraging your IT governance system. If you don't have one, then I think that would be really hard because you'd have to build governance. Doing the principles, making sure the principles lead you to policies. The policies are the actions, the do's and the don'ts for employees in working with the AI systems. Establishing a trust team. So getting that different perspectives, a nice diverse team to look at it from their point of view, not just a technical point of view, so that we can be monitoring and making decisions about and being accountable for our AI systems. Operationalize, so that was putting it out into action, and then the educate. So which of these would be the hardest for your business? All of these need to be done, but which one do you think, oh, I don't know if we can do that? Or if we tried to do it, I don't know how we would.
Yeah, so give some a little bit of time here to think about it. I'll tell you the easiest one for us would be educate,
Yes.
because we're in the education industry.
Yeah.
There's a freebie, but what would you say, Christine, is typically the most difficult one that you run across with organizations? Which of these do they find is a heavier stone to lift than the others?
Okay. There's two that immediately jump out for me. One is establish a trust team. I've definitely seen teams, but uh, they groups of people that are called a team that aren't necessarily understanding what their team function is and behaving like a team and not
Right.
having the appropriate mechanisms in place to act on concerns that they have.
Right.
So it's not enough just to sort of put a group of, cross-functional people in a room and say, hey, you're the trust team.
Mhm.
Here's a box of donuts. Enjoy.
Yeah.
There really has to be some tangible uh, processes in place for them to be doing the job that you expect from the trust team. So there's
Yeah.
ambiguity around that.
Yeah.
And the other
So
one
there's got
was,
to be firm expectations and roles associated with that team. It's not, we're all going to do the same thing.
yeah, exactly. The principles is the other one. I think it's an easy win, especially when it talks about building up your AI governance.
Mhm.
But it's one that gets treated, I think, and if it does get addressed, it gets treated in a somewhat trivial way, more of a academic exercise. So I've got my principles here and I got my policies. Well, that's
Right.
kind of like the ivory tower mentality.
Right.
Just because you've written it down, you had the idea and all of that, it doesn't mean anything if it's not something that people have right at their fingertips. Like the password policy, when they log in, they see the password policy and they're forced to conform to the password policy.
Mhm.
And I think uh, like obviously if I want to get in, I'm going to follow your rules about the password policy. We need to have the same kind of thing for the policies that are the actionable items that express the principles for AI use. It has to be timely, it has to be meaningful, and it has to be easy, accessible right there for us to do. And that's the gap. So even if you've got your principles, are they actually being acted upon?
Yeah,
And
I see this as a big issue for a lot of
yeah,
organizations. Um,
yeah.
moving from the back office to the front line.
Yes, yeah,
And
that
something
gap.
that gets lost in translation
Yeah.
and saying, oh, we have this SOP in a book somewhere is not going to do it for
Yeah,
anybody.
I know, right? So I think like all of them are really important, but those two are the ones that I see they say they've done it, but then a closer examination would say, well, it's the way you've done it isn't effective, right? So you've doing checklists are handy, but it's only when you actually monitor and observe that you can actually then determine if it's been successful. Yeah. Anyone jump out for you and any others?
That one definitely operationalized definitely jumps out for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing to conceptualize it, the ivory tower, and
Mm.
it's a completely different thing to have it operationalize and actually work well in your organization.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point.
Because it also requires that you rethink it, you know, because we had this great idea, but we are not the frontline operators working with the customers, and this is unacceptable to most of our customers. So there needs to be a feedback loop where they can take information back and change the SOP so that it actually operates well for their organization,
Yeah.
not just force, you know, something that's more ivory tower that's never going to work in reality and never actually see the light of day in terms
Yeah.
of operations.
Oh, and on that point, like audits are something that organizations, especially those that understand a lot of need to be following regulations. Uh, Anybody dealing with data knows about that. So audits seem to be the easier part of operationalizing that they know, but it's the bias checks, trying to really understand bias. Do you even know your own biases?
Mhm.
Right? So being able to do that in a way, and it's really tricky in our day and age of, how do you do that in a respectful way?
Right. How does the customer service representative that has to tell, you know, enforce this with clients or customers, go back to the CEO and say this is wrong,
Yeah, yeah,
and without fear of losing their job?
right. Yeah. So one, the challenge of recognizing when a bias or lack of fairness has occurred. The other one is how do you actually get that addressed
Yeah,
where, you know, it's a good thing as opposed to I'm, running the risk. Yeah. The other one is explainability. And this was something that was interesting in the EU because part of explainability for the operationalized is that algorithms had to be published. I think this was something in the Netherlands specifically, and that's perceived as a company's IP, and they didn't want to have to do that. So that there's a nuance to this that can be extremely challenging. So it's not necessarily that you have to show your source code, but you have to be able to explain your
yeah,
code.
right.
So there's the two differences. And have you built the model with the understanding that that has to be part of the model to be able to explain itself? Uh, and the reason I mentioned that last bit is because the nature of AI is the code that was written when you put your product into production. If you're building your own AI product or somebody else, you're basically leasing a product. It changes. The code changes. It's such a different paradigm for software. We think of I have a version and that's what's in production. No, the more AI runs, the more it optimizes the code. The code changes. So what is the logic it's using to improve itself is part of that explainability. So yeah, you're right to highlight operationalize because there's definitely things in there that are new to us because of AI. Yeah, so very good. So
So at
continuing,
that, I guess we have a few questions, just final thoughts.
yeah,
Uh, One would be, what AI projects are you aware of at your organization? So, it might be another department, something's going on. There's not too many organizations at this point that don't have an AI project going on of one kind or another. It may not be in your department, but which ones are you aware of? It's kind of good to think about it, maybe jot down all the ones that you know of. And then the second question would be, what key factors would you focus on to ensure their success? So some food for thought, obviously, within this webinar and some of the other webinars that we've done. But what would you focus on to ensure their success? So what are the success factors for a project, for an
yeah,
AI project?
yeah. And
So
actually,
adoption, I think, is one of them. Like, of course, nobody wants to create shelfware,
yeah, shelf.
but it happens. So how do you prevent your AI project from becoming shelfware?
Yeah,
It's a hard question, but it's a question you'd rather ask yourself upfront than ask yourself
yeah.
after.
And actually, I'm wondering if maybe when you started listening to this conversation that Mike and I are having, that you had an idea of, oh, yeah, this is what we're doing, and these are the things that we're paying attention to. Has any of the things we've talked about today actually had you go, oh, I hadn't thought to do that, and now I will? We'd be very interested in hearing if any of this content either validated, yeah, for sure, we knew to do that, and now we feel validated to do it or encouraged to do it more, or was there something that you got out of this where you're going, oh, yeah, we missed that one, like a gap?
Right.
Excuse me.
I would want to look closer at bias.
Oh, yeah.
I am not probably the person to lead that investigation. But you should have that that clarity that you may not be the right person for it as well is very
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
So
And
having said that,
yeah.
um, I guess we're moving on to the next slide, which is, hey, why work with us for AI on projects? So I think the proven track record in scaling AI is one. There's a lot of new organizations right now that are getting into AI. They haven't worked with top tier organizations, and it's a risk. So we've helped organizations worldwide transition from pilots to production and scalability in AI adoption. So we've got some pretty good plans in place for this. Built it before. Doesn't mean we're going to do it exactly the same way we did before. Each project is a custom effort,
Yeah.
and we're going to go through the discovery and find out what the needs are exactly and build to spec, of course.
Yeah.
And I guess the second reason would be the capability of building on long-term success. So we empower your teams with internal skills. We're not the consultant that wants to be there on site forever. We want to teach you and your organization how to build it and how to run it. And then we want to move on to another organization and teach them how to. So it's a bit of a different model in that respect. AI faster and more effectively, reducing risk and vendor dependence is a big one for us.
Yeah.
Like I said at the top, we're happiest when we see you succeed. We get joy out of that, seeing others succeed. And that's what we do in terms of AI projects. That's our why, if you will.
Yeah. You're the star and we want to make you shine.
Well
So
said.
thank you.
We're not the stars. We're going to make you shine
Yeah,
brighter.
we're just in the background supporting you being the stars in your industry.
We are the people that you literally shove the pizza to underneath the door. No.
That's right. But um, so definitely, if you're looking for support, we're there. But before we go into that, just closing topics here, I wanted to give you a solid, list of things, tangible here. So a few ideas of projects that we can help you with. You want to walk us through this, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. So assessing employees to uncover hidden gems. This was we alluded to this a bit when we were talking about assessments. So often the most knowledgeable employees are not the most vocal. So in other words, the engineer that claims to know the most about AI may have the loudest voice, but it's probably not the person who is actually the most knowledgeable about AI. So we can find that out for you. So creating an AI learning plan for the organization. And again, that can start out at the individual level, the team level. We can build it in whatever logical capacity we need to. And setting up learning journeys from that perspective as well. Establishing AI adoption programs with executive sponsors to bring everyone on board.
Yeah.
I find most adoption programs fail when they don't have executive leadership. And if it's one organization doing it, one line of business, one department doing it, they tend to fail as well because you start to run into problems across the organization when other departments don't adopt the same policies. So I think that's really important to be at the executive level and get executive sponsors. Setting up governance frameworks and AI protocols and make them actionable. Again, we're talking about operationalizing.
Yeah.
Getting it from the great planning stage and having all the binders, if you will, in that old SOP example, to really being operationalized and having them actionable and having everyone understand what they need to do at the right time. It's incredibly important. Building a custom AI platform for your company, and we can't say enough about this. There's so many news articles that come across, and you think to yourself, if they didn't use a publicly accessible tool, if they used a private, their own AI platform, this would never have happened. Because that share would never have happened. That AI tool would not have picked up that IP and then, of course, shared it with anyone else. So I think this one is something that we don't see a ton of right now, but I think in the next decade or two, most companies will be either looking at having their own private AI platform or they'll already have it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely the tooling around it does lean towards that. So I agree with you there, Mike. Yeah.
Evaluating AI tools objectively before you buy. So the industry is very full of organizations that will make a commission for selling a product. They seem to be the ones that have the product information, but it's a very lopsided argument.
Yeah.
It's an argument for the product. Where do you get biased or unbiased, I should say, information about a product?
Yeah.
Rather than biased from the producers or people that are being are getting a percentage of the sale. So that is something that we can do for organizations is evaluate AI tools and give you our objective viewpoint on it. We are not commissioned by anyone for AI tools, so we can give you an honest opinion about what we think. Take a look under the hood and tell you what we think about the AI tool.
And finding the best fit doesn't mean always spending the most money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I think, we take the example of the mid SMB market, maybe, that adopted SAP, early in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And then wish they hadn't.
Right.
They bought the most expensive tool.
Yeah. Overkill. Yeah.
There we go. So putting together a 5-year plan with risk mitigation built in. That's something that a lot of organizations are looking at right now. What is our planning? We don't have an AI protocol set up for our organization, and we would like some help with that. So we're here at PZ to help you with that as well.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. So hopefully this is inspiring you to think of the possibilities, that it's not too big, it's not over the top, but also not trivializing it. There's a lot of work that can and should be done, which allows us the closing couple of slides here, looking at the core best practices. So start with the business goal if you're just getting going. So don't have AI tell you what you should do. You should be thinking about what does our business need to do, and is there AI that could help us? Uh, it has to be part of, like, it's like step zero, build trust into the design. So ethics, risk, compliance, I mean, this is the message of the day. So it has to be there from the get-go. Make sure that you have diverse voices. We were talking about the trust team, but definitely all employees, and getting, feeling from your customers as well, right? Because, if they're uncomfortable with AI, we got to deal with that. So make sure you're reducing your blind spots. Trust first culture. So we want to have that fostered. We don't want people to be penalized because they saw a red flag, or they anticipated risk, or they're taking it, they're voicing their concerns. So we want to make sure that explainability, fairness, and accountability is encouraged and supported. Obviously, test. Um, Now, notice when we say test, you think, oh, you do that before production. We're saying that this is continuous. It doesn't end. With AI especially, it doesn't end. So it's not just when you go to production that it stops. Uh,
Definitely has a built-in feedback loop, right?
yeah, yeah. Now, I know, like, I can see, the tech people rolling their eyes on this one, document thoroughly, oh, please.
Mhm.
But I mean, we don't have to, like, I mean, we're talking about having AI, but we definitely want to have the records there for audits, for accountability. So we can definitely have tooling to support us with this, but put it in place and make sure that it's focused on what is needed in order to be accountable and to
And
be
this is
compliant.
actually helpful for the programming team. So when you make something that takes months and months to code, you don't always remember all the decisions that you make.
Right, right.
And then later on, when you have a different version, like, why the heck did we use this tool
Yeah,
when we could have used that tool?
yeah,
And if you can go back into the documentation and find out why that tool was chosen and why it made sense at the time,
yeah,
it helps the project and helps the IT folks so much
yeah.
for the
Not
next.
wasting time then when you're trying to figure things
Absolutely.
out
So you're not just doing it for someone else, you're also doing it for
for
yourself.
yourselves. Yeah. And then the key techniques for AI success. So we have the best practices, but these are techniques. So one is to run an AI readiness checklist. So where are you? So you might be using AI, you might not have any AI, you might think that you're very experienced, but you should always check to see where you're at. It's like going to school and getting a report card. So this is definitely a key support output of governance. So looking at your governance, your data, your capability, any of the gaps, do that early and often. Bias detection tools. So we want to be able to have the ability to reweight things, test and audit for fairness. And again, over time, it's not something that you do once and then you move on. The enable explainability. So again, I was saying that there are tools out there that can help us with this. Want to definitely leverage them appropriately. And if you are purchasing a vendor's product, I want to ask them these kinds of questions as well. They're going to be part of our organization in that we're embracing their product. So, how are they supporting explainability? Minimize and protect data. I love this one. So collect only what is needed and then consider synthetic data. So you may need to conform to certain format or structure of data in order for the logic to work. But what data is relevant for the work you're doing is the only real data that needs to be there. The rest of it could be generated in order to make sure that the data is understood to be complete, right? So there's a lot of strategies there to help us minimize any vulnerable data. And then, of course, focusing on the protection of it. Definitely AI, we want humans in the loop. AI is, as much as, like, I'm sure some of you have heard of, agentic AI, more recent hot topic where it actually acts as an agent, not just an assistant. It can make decisions. That doesn't mean we don't need people there. We definitely want to keep humans in the loop, and that and this is part of the governance decision, any sensitive decision should involve humans still. Monitor after launch. So again, I know we've been kind of bringing this home repeatedly. Uh, it when you have AI in your systems, there always has to be tracking and reporting in place. So real performance, understanding what an anomaly would be and having it flagged and then getting a response to it. So those are the key techniques and just sort of a wrapping everything that we've talked about up.
Mhm.
So that brings us to the end. So
Yeah,
we,
so
yeah,
definitely get in contact with us if you are interested in the bonus bundle. And I think on the next slide, so yeah, the recording of today's event, AI Trust Readiness Checklist, which is a terrific tool actually to go through all of these in detail and see where you're at in terms of AI trust readiness.
so we can send that out to you if just have to message us and ask for it.
Yep, and contact detail is here for Christine and for me. So this is for the wrap up pre Q&A. What we discussed in today's webinar. So we talked about what is AI digital trust and why is it business critical. We talked about the 5 pillars of digital trust, real world risks of ignoring trust, how to build AI digital trust, core best practices for trusted AI, key techniques for AI success, how to get your business bundle. We just talked about bonus bundle. I always say business when I see bonus.
Well, it is a
Uh,
business bonus bundle.
business bonus bundle. Thank you.
Yeah.
And our next webinar is entitled "When AI Writes a Script, Who Controls Your Brand Voice?" Date time. So we've got Wednesday, June 4th, 1 p.m. ET to 2 p.m. ET. And our guest speaker will be John Gillum, who is the founder of Originality AI. So I have the link here as well. I guess we could probably include that in the bundle for a
Yeah,
small
yeah,
price. No, we would do it for free.
yeah, for sure. So I hope that you enjoyed your time here. And I know that the timing was a little off due to technical difficulties, but if anybody is there and you have questions, Mike and I are here for you. But if you're one that's just been watching this as a recording, definitely reach out to us, Christine Thompson, Mike Parker on LinkedIn, and we can go from there.
Terrific. And we'll see everybody on June 4th. Thank you
June
so
4th.
much.
Yes, thank you.